Soft instrumental background, slow fade in from black. Narrator, calm reflective voice. She's ignoring you. And right now, it feels like your whole world is stuck on pause. You've checked your phone more times than you'd admit. You reread her last message, wondering if you said something wrong. You sit in silence, scrolling, hoping for a notification. But nothing comes. And somewhere deep in your chest it stings. Not just because she's gone quiet, but because the silence feels personal. Feels like rejection. But what if I told you something different? What if I told you that her silence is not the end of the story? What if it's the start of your transformation? Because here's the truth. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to become. You see, in that space where she vanishes, where no words come back, that's where most men spiral. They chase, they beg. They try to fix what was never theirs to hold in the first place. But not you. Not anymore. Because today we're going to do something different. We're going to flip the script. Welcome, warrior. This isn't just another video about how to win her back or text her the right way. This is about reclaiming something far more important: your center, your peace, your power. In the next few moments, I'll walk you through 7 timeless Stoic secret strategies drawn from the minds of ancient warriors like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, blended with modern wisdom forged in fire. But this isn't a lecture. This is a mirror. And if you dare to look into it, what you'll find isn't a man broken by silence. It's a man rising through it, because the moment she stops responding, that's your invitation, not to panic, not to plead, but to pause and pivot. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why her silence hits so hard? It's because as men, we're wired to pursue clarity. We want to fix, to resolve, to know where we stand. But her silence offers none of that. No answers. No closure. No map. And in that ambiguity, we often place our value on her response. We think, if she replies, I'm enough. If she doesn't, I'm not. But here's the first lesson, and it's a hard one. Your worth was never hers to decide. The man you're about to become, he doesn't flinch when the phone stays dark. He doesn't chase after someone who walked away from his energy. Instead, he turns inward, he rebuilds. He sharpens. And somewhere along the way, she starts to feel that shift. She wonders where the version of you who used to beg went, and what exactly you're becoming in the silence she left behind. This is not revenge. This is resurrection. So, if you're ready to stop asking, why isn't she talking to me? And start asking, what kind of man am I building in her absence? Then lean in, because we're about to take back everything you gave away without apology. No games, no gimmicks. Just grounded masculinity, tested by silence and made unshakable by it. Let's begin. Narrator, thoughtful, grounded tone. Let me tell you something that might sting at first, but will free you if you let it sink in. You can't control her silence. You can't force a reply. You can't make her care. And more importantly, you shouldn't. Wanna. Now, I know that sounds harsh, especially when you're in that space. You know the one. You send a message. And then nothing, no reply. No call. Just emptiness. And your mind starts doing gymnastics. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? Is she with someone else? You start spiraling, not because of her silence, but because of what your mind is doing with it. Marcus Aurelius, one of the wisest men who ever lived, once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And brother, that changes everything, because her silence, that's an outside event. It's wind, it's rain. It's a train that's already left the station. You can't outrun it. You can't control it. But you can decide who you become. In the middle of it, let me tell you about a guy I know, Tony. Regular dude. Solid heart. Fell hard for this woman named Emma. Things were going well until one day, they weren't. She started ghosting him. Texts unanswered. Calls ignored. He felt like the floor dropped out from under him. At first, he did what most men do. He reached out again and again. He stalked her social media. He obsessed over every little sign, every post, every silence. Then something shifted. Tony came across a line from Seneca, the Stoic philosopher. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And it hit him. He wasn't suffering because she stopped replying. He was suffering because he gave her silence a meaning it didn't deserve. So he stopped trying to decode the silence. And he started building through it. He hit the gym. He crushed it at work. He got back to doing the things that made him feel like a man again. He laughed with his friends. He remembered his worth. Months later, out of nowhere, Emma texted him. But Tony didn't melt. He didn't rush to reply. Because by that time, he no longer needed her attention to feel okay. Her silence? It gave him back to himself, and that's the lesson. Acceptance is not giving up, it's waking up. It's saying, I see that you're pulling away, and I choose to stay solid. You see, chasing someone who's walking away never ends well. It always looks the same. You lose your center, your power, your edge. And she doesn't come closer, she runs further. But when you stop reaching, when you stop reacting, when you sit in that silence and breathe, that's when the game changes. You become the man who's not shaken by what he can't control. You become grounded, rooted, unshakable. And let me tell you something, that kind of energy is rare. And rare is powerful. So, if you're in that place right now, if she's not responding, if your phone is quiet, then let it be, let her. Silence be her choice. Let your response be your freedom. Focus on what's in your hands, your routine, your body, your mindset, your values, your direction. Because when you master your response, you become the one thing most men never are, untouchable. Pause. Soft fade out music. Let this land. Her silence isn't about you, but how you respond. That tells the world exactly who you are. So if you're ready to stop reacting and start rising, stay tuned. Because the next step is where you flip the script for real. You know what most men do when a woman pulls away? They panic. They flood her inbox with texts. They call. They explain. They apologize for things that didn't even happen. And all of it, every word, every gesture is a reaction to her silence. Here's the problem with that. It's exactly what she expects. You see, women are intuitive. They feel energy. They sense shifts. And when they go quiet, part of them is watching to see what you'll do next. Not always consciously, but it's there. And if your response is predictable, if you reach out, chase, or try to win her back, you just told her exactly how much power she has over you. But what if you didn't react that way? What if, instead of chasing, you did nothing? What if her silence was met, not with desperation, but with calm detachment? Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's what this moment is about. Mastering yourself, instead of losing yourself in her emotional weather. Let me paint a picture. She stops replying to your texts. You're tempted to follow up, maybe something casual. Hey, just checking in. But this time you don't. You match her energy. She pulls back, you pull back. Not as a tactic, not out of spite, but because you understand this, your attention is valuable. It's not given to those who don't appreciate it. And something incredible happens in that space. She starts to wonder. Why isn't he texting me? Is he upset? Has he moved on? Did I misread his interest? That curiosity, it starts to build. Not because you played games, but because you didn't play along. You flip the script. Now, here's where most guys get it wrong. They hear reverse psychology and think manipulation. They think it's about pretending to not care so she comes running. That's not what this is. This isn't about tricking her. It's about transforming you. It's about becoming the kind of man whose self-worth doesn't rise and fall with someone else's attention. A man who doesn't need to beg for validation because he already knows his value. Have you ever seen a man walk into a room and say absolutely nothing, but somehow he's the one everyone notices? That's not confidence. That's centeredness. That's what women feel when you stop reacting and start responding with silence, not as punishment, but as presence. You're showing her that your piece isn't on the auction block. Now, this isn't easy. It goes against your instincts. You're human. You want clarity. You want connection. But sometimes, what looks like clarity is just you giving away your edge, and what looks like connection is you proving you can't stand being alone. But when you don't chase, when you don't explain, when you just breathe and hold your ground, that's when everything starts to shift. She start to lean in, not because you manipulated her, but because you became a mystery. You became a question she couldn't answer, and we are all drawn to what we don't fully understand. So, here's your reminder. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to make a scene. You don't even need to respond. Sometimes, the strongest message you can send is no message at all. Let her silence stay hers, and let yours say everything it needs to. There's a moment every man faces. Maybe you're in it right now. She stopped responding. No calls, no texts, just silence. And you're left there, alone with your thoughts, staring at a phone that refuses to light up. Most men waste that moment. They drown in self-doubt, replay conversations in their heads, scroll through her photos, compare themselves to the guy she might be talking to now. But you don't have to be most men, because that silence, that brutal, echoing silence, isn't just a void. It's a forge. It's the place where weak men collapse and strong men are built. You want to know the real shift? Stop seeing her silence as rejection and start using it as fuel. Jake was just a regular guy. Decent job, decent shape, decent confidence. Then came Mia. He fell hard. She seemed all in until she wasn't. Suddenly the replies got slower, the emojis disappeared. Then came the silence, and Jake spiraled at first. He wanted to reach out, to ask what went wrong, to fix it. But instead, he chose something different. He turned off his notifications. He turned on a different kind of focus. He hit the gym like it was a battlefield. He signed up for a coding boot camp. He started saving for the business he'd always talked about, but never had the guts to start. He became a man in motion. 6 months later, Jake wasn't just over Mia. He had outgrown her. She did text back eventually, of course. But by then, she didn't recognize the man he'd become. That's the lesson. You don't grow by chasing closure. You grow by choosing creation. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing." It's not smooth, it's not graceful, it's messy, it's raw. And sometimes it hurts. But when a woman pulls away, when she disappears, when the silence starts to sting, you have a choice. You can let it bruise you, or you can let it build you. You can waste time checking her profile, or you can build a profile that makes her stop scrolling. You can replay every moment in your head, or you can rewrite your future with every rep, every page, every dollar you stack, every morning you get up before the sun. This isn't about revenge. This is about rebirth. It's about becoming so locked into your growth that her silence doesn't shake you, because your foundation doesn't depend on her voice. That kind of man doesn't need validation. He creates results. He doesn't need someone to choose him. He already chose himself. And here's the twist. Once you start to evolve, not to win her back, but to win your life back, everything shifts. The silence that once felt like punishment becomes a sanctuary. The absence that used to feel heavy starts to feel like space to breathe, to think, to build. And maybe, just maybe, she'll look back one day and realize the man she walked away from, he became everything she thought she wanted after she left. But by then, it won't matter, because by then, you won't be waiting. So if she's gone quiet, don't chase noise. Chase growth. Chase peace. Chase the man you promised yourself you'd become before she even showed up. Turn her silence into your fuel. And let your future be louder than her absence ever was. There's a moment we all know too well. You send the message. You wait. Nothing. No reply. No call back. Just silence. And in that silence, something inside you starts to panic. You begin filling the space with stories. She's done with me. She's talking to someone else. She doesn't care. But what if I told you that her silence isn't rejection? What if it's something else entirely? What if her silence is actually a revelation? Because that quiet moment, as uncomfortable as it feels, it's showing you something. It's not just that she's gone quiet. It's how much of your peace was tied to her voice. That's the real revelation. Not about her. About you. You see, most men interpret silence as punishment, as abandonment, as failure. But Stoic wisdom teaches something radically different. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That space you're afraid of. That silence you're trying to escape. It's not a void. It's a mirror. It's where you finally see yourself. Without distractions. No texts. No validation. No dopamine hits. Just you. And the truth. And yes, at first, it might feel like something's missing. But maybe that missing feeling isn't about her. Maybe it's about how long you've avoided being alone with yourself. Maybe it's about how often you've outsourced your worth to someone else's attention. This silence? It's not empty. It's sacred. It's the place where boys collapse. And men begin. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in your own stillness, not scrolling, not escaping, but just being? That space is where you recalibrate, where you remember what actually matters, where you rebuild the boundaries that get blurred. When you're always chasing someone else's approval, you want to know what real strength looks like. It's not reacting. It's not proving. It's not trying to get her to see your worth. It's sitting with the ache and refusing to flinch. It's choosing to grow in the absence, rather than beg for its end, because silence isn't your enemy. It's your sanctuary. It's the pause that gives you clarity, the distance that grants you perspective, and most importantly, it's the moment where you stop waiting for her and start returning to yourself. Let me ask you something. What if this was your opportunity? What if the quiet wasn't her way of leaving, but life's way of saying, now? Finally, you have space to become that version of you you've been putting off, the one who gets focused, who trains harder, who reads more, who wakes up with a plan, who remembers who he is. That man is born in solitude, not surrounded by noise, not dependent on attention, but anchored in stillness. So no, her silence doesn't define your worth. It defines your opportunity. You can fill it with reaction, or you can fill it with ritual. You can beg for her response, or you can become the man who doesn't need one. And trust me, there's nothing more powerful than a man who's comfortable in his own quiet. Because when the world goes silent and he doesn't flinch, everyone else starts to lean in. So if she's not calling, let her. If she's gone quiet, honor it. Not out of pride, not out of spite, but out of deep, grounded, masculine presence. Because that space she left behind, it might just be the room you needed to finally come home to yourself. Pain is part of life, especially emotional pain. That sting you feel in your chest when she stops answering. That heaviness in your gut when her name pops up, then disappears. That sharp drop in energy when you realize she's not coming back. It hurts, and that's okay. But here's where most men get trapped. They believe that because it hurts, they have to react. They spiral. They send another text. They vent to friends. Or worse, they isolate. They let the emotion run their life. But what if you didn't collapse this time? What if this pain became your forge? Because emotional pain is inevitable. But emotional reaction? That's optional. The Stoics taught that a man's strength isn't measured by how much he avoids pain, but by how he holds it. You're allowed to feel, but you don't have to fall apart. This is the moment you start building something bigger than her, something more permanent than a relationship. You start building emotional armor. And no, I don't mean becoming cold. This isn't about pretending you don't care. This isn't about acting tough while secretly breaking down inside. This is about learning to stand still in the fire. This is about choosing presence over panic. This is about becoming the kind of man who feels deeply, but refuses to let those feelings destroy him. How? You begin by creating rhythm, structure, ritual. You stop checking your phone every 10 minutes. And you start checking in with yourself. You get back in the gym, not to impress her, but to rebuild your discipline. You read not to seem wise, but because your mind needs direction. You pursue something meaningful, not to distract yourself from her absence, but to finally reconnect with your own purpose. Because here's the truth. If her silence can shake your entire foundation, then it's not her silence that's the problem. It's the fact that you never built the foundation to begin with. This is your chance to do that. You don't have to deny the ache. You just have to stop giving it the steering wheel. Let the silence come. Feel the emotions. Let them rise. But don't drown in them. Observe them like waves. Strong, real, but temporary. Ask yourself, what kind of man do I want to be when nobody is watching? When no one is validating me? When no woman is texting back? That man, he's built right here. Not in the spotlight, not in love, but in the quiet. And yes, it'll feel lonely at first. That's part of the process. But loneliness can be fertile ground if you use it well. There's a certain clarity that only comes when the noise fades. And when you sit in it long enough, you'll start to hear your own voice again. Not hers, yours. That voice says, I'm not falling apart. I'm building myself back stronger, wiser, calmer. That's emotional armor. Not indifference. Not numbness. But discipline. Stability. Self-control. You're not avoiding feeling. You're learning how to feel without breaking. And someday, when she looks back, and she will, she won't see the man who fell apart when she left. She see the man who stood tall. The one who didn't chase. The one who didn't beg. The one who, in the absence of noise, became unshakable. That's not revenge. That's evolution. So if you're hurting right now, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Let it sharpen you. Let it show you what still needs healing, still needs growth. Because the man who can hurt and still hold his ground, he's not just stronger, he's untouchable. There's a silent danger that breaks more men than heartbreak ever could. It's not her silence, it's yours. It's the isolation. The long nights where it's just you, your thoughts, and no one to check them. And I get it. We've been told that real men handle things alone. That you should suffer quietly. That pain makes you stronger, so long as no one sees it. But here's the truth. Men don't break because they're weak. They break because they're alone. You weren't built to carry the weight of heartbreak, doubt, confusion, and transformation all on your own. You were built to walk that path with other men beside you. Not yes men. Not drinking buddies. But a circle of grounded men who hold you accountable to your highest standard. Ask yourself this. Who are the voices you hear when you're doubting yourself? Who checks your excuses? Who tells you the truth when it's uncomfortable? If the answer is no one, then that's not strength, it's a silent trap. Because here's what happens in isolation. You overthink, you spiral. You make decisions from a place of fear. You send the late-night text. You chase the validation you promised you'd never need again, not because you're broken, but because you're unsupported. The Stoics knew this. Even the strongest minds needed mirrors. Seneca had Lucilius. Marcus Aurelius had his generals. Because they understood your environment is not neutral. It shapes you. It sets your baseline for what's acceptable, for what you tolerate, for who you become. So what kind of men are around you? Do they fold when things get tough? Do they validate every emotional impulse you have? Do they encourage your worst habits just to keep the peace? Or do they challenge you to be better? Do they call you out when you're slipping? Do they remind you of your purpose when all you can feel is pain? The men you walk with determine the man you become. If you want to be stoic, grounded, unshakable, you can't build that in a vacuum. You build it with others who are walking the same road. Men who've been tested. Men who don't flinch when you admit the truth. Men who aren't afraid to say, "Brother, this isn't who you are." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. A tribe doesn't make you dependent. It makes you aligned. Because when you surround yourself with disciplined, purpose-driven men, you start to see yourself differently. You raise your standards. You stop chasing women who don't see your value because the men around you would never let you shrink. That's small again. And when the silence comes, when the texts stop, when your mind starts slipping into old patterns, you don't spiral. Because you're not alone in the dark. You've got brothers holding the light. And if you don't have that kind of tribe yet, you build it. One honest conversation at a time. One man at a time who's tired of surface-level friendships and ready for something real. Because masculinity isn't meant to be performed in isolation. It's meant to be forged together, in truth, in challenge, in brotherhood. So stop trying to do it all alone. You're not less of a man for needing others. You're more of a man when you choose the right ones. And when you walk with strength side by side with men who sharpen you, there's no silence that can break you anymore. Because your foundation isn't built on her attention. It's built on something far deeper. And that is what makes you untouchable. There's something you need to understand if you want to stop being emotionally reactive. If you want to stop crumbling every time a woman pulls away or stops responding. It's not about being colder. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's not about winning the breakup. It's about having a purpose. Not a hobby, not a temporary distraction. A real purpose, something bigger than her, and bigger than your feelings in the moment. Because when a man doesn't have purpose, he becomes emotionally unstable. He ties his identity to attention. He ties his self-worth to someone else's presence. And the moment that person pulls away, he falls apart. Sound familiar? Her silence starts to feel like a crisis. You can't focus. You can't sleep. You replay everything, trying to make sense of it. But what you're really feeling isn't rejection. It's disconnection from your mission. It's the ache of not knowing where your life is heading without her in it. So what do? You build something that matters so much to you that her absence stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like space. You wake up with fire in your chest because you've got things to do, goals that don't revolve around anyone else's affection. And when you live like that, you stop checking your phone. You stop worrying if she's seen your story. Because you're too busy writing a better story for yourself. I'm not saying this is easy. Purpose doesn't fall out of the sky. Sometimes it's buried under years of noise, childhood expectations, fear, doubt, heartbreak. But when you start digging, when you start reclaiming the parts of yourself that were distracted, numbed, or chasing validation, you uncover something that changes everything. Call on direction. And direction is power. Because now, every hour means something. Your gym session isn't for show, it's part of your standard. Your reading time isn't to seem smart, it's sharpening your edge. Your work isn't just a job, it's a vehicle for your vision. And here's what happens when you live like that. She notices, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you're no longer accessible in the same way. You're not waiting for her. You're not posting cryptic messages hoping she bites. You're moving, with certainty, with depth, with velocity. And that movement, it does something most women aren't used to. It makes them question the grip they thought they had on your emotions. They expected you to fall apart. Instead, you locked in. And this is where purpose separates the boys from the men. Boys react. Men build. Boys seek attention. Men attract respect. Boys get lost in heartbreak. Men use pain as fuel. Because when your mission is real, when it lights you up from the inside out, you become emotionally untouchable. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't fold. So if you're hurting right now, and you don't know what to do with the silence she left behind, don't fill it with noise. Fill it with purpose to build that business. Write that book. Learn that craft. Reclaim your health, your mindset, your goals. Not to win her back, but to remember who you were before you made her the center of your world. Because when your days become sacred, her silence becomes irrelevant. And if she ever circles back, let her meet a man so rooted in his mission that her attention is no longer the reward, your purpose is. And that's something no one can ghost, walk away from, or take away. Not now. Not ever. There's a quiet power most men never learn to use. It's not found in words. It's found in absence. The moment she goes silent, the average guy panics. He rushes in to fix it. He texts, calls, double texts. He fills the space she left with noise, hoping it'll bring her back. But what he doesn't realize is, the space was never meant to be filled. It was meant to breathe, to stretch, to allow curiosity to grow. Because here's the truth most men miss. Your absence can be far more powerful than your presence, but only if you let it speak without begging to be heard. When she pulls back and you immediately chase. When you try to prove your worth. When you just check in to see how she's doing. You're not inspiring desire. You're confirming predictability. You've told her, I'll always be here, even when I'm not being valued. And the mystery dies. Now let me be clear, I'm not telling you to play games. This isn't about trying to make her jealous or pretending to be busy. It's about one simple principle. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Your time, your presence, your mental space, these things are not free. And when someone chooses to step away from them, your response shouldn't be to beg for them to come back. It should be to quietly withdraw your light and let the dark speak for itself. Think of it like this. You walk into a room and turn off the music. What happens? People notice. They pause. They wonder. But only if you don't rush back in to explain why the music stopped. That's what your silence should feel like. Intentional, peaceful, mysterious. If she's used to men chasing her the moment she disappears, what does it say when you don't? When you stay still, unmoved, rooted in your own world, she begins to ask questions. What changed? Is he done? Did I lose my grip on him? And right there, that's where attraction lives. Not in desperation, but in uncertainty. And yet, this only works if it's genuine. If your silence is laced with resentment or passive aggression, she feel it. If you're just holding out until she comes back, it's not presence, it's manipulation. But if your absence is real, because your peace matters more than her reply, then she feels something rare. A man who doesn't chase what removes itself. That's the kind of man she doesn't forget. Here's the hard question to ask yourself. Are you using silence as a tool to get her attention? Or as a mirror to rebuild your own? Because when you truly let go, when you stop waiting and start living, you become the open loop in her mind, not the man who blew up her phone, not the one who folded under pressure, but the man who vanished with dignity and didn't need to explain why. So if you're sitting in that silence right now, let it grow. Let her wonder, not because you're punishing her, but because you're protecting you. And in a world full of men who overshare, over-apologize, over-pursue, your quiet confidence will feel like thunder. Let her reach the conclusion on her own, that your energy isn't something to be taken lightly, that your absence has weight, and that when you stop showing up, Something meaningful goes missing, not because you're trying to be missed, but because you finally realized you're not here to convince anyone. You're here to become unforgettable, not by chasing, but by walking away, without looking back. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you left someone wondering, not confused out of chaos, but curious, genuinely intrigued, because they couldn't quite figure you out? There's something powerful about a man who doesn't explain everything, who doesn't overshare, who doesn't wear his emotions on his sleeve like a badge he's desperate to be seen for. And it's not about being cold. It's about being centered, collected, unpredictable in the way that makes people lean in, not back away. Because here's the truth. Mystery is magnetic, not mystery that's manipulative, but mystery born from emotional discipline. From a man who has a deep inner world and doesn't feel the need to hand it out like coupons. 2. Many men make the mistake of thinking vulnerability means overexposure. They explain every feeling. They lay it all out. They try so hard to prove they're safe. They end up predictable and easy to lose interest in. You want to know what pulls her in? Not being distant, but being composed. A man who listens more than he speaks. A man who responds, not reacts. A man who doesn't rush to fill every moment of silence with explanations, emojis, or emotional performances. I move in silence. That's not just a quote. It's a way of living. It's how you carry yourself when someone doesn't text back. It's how you hold your posture when tension fills the room. It's how you make her wonder, not because you're playing games, but because you're not playing at all. Let me give you something to think about. When everything about you is obvious, when your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions are always on display, there's nothing left for her to explore. And what we can fully understand, we tend to undervalue. But when a man holds something back, not out of fear, but out of presence, he becomes a question she wants to answer. A puzzle she's drawn to, not because he's hiding, but because he's whole without explaining it. Have you ever noticed how certain men walk into a room, say nothing, and yet every head turns? It's not because they're loud. It's because their energy is quiet, but certain. They've mastered the art of not being read. Not because they're fake, but because they no longer need external approval to feel solid. That kind of energy. You can't fake it. You have to earn it through stillness, through experience, through restraint. So if you're the guy who always texts first, always reaches out to clarify, always rushes to make sure you're understood, I want to offer you something different. Try silence. Try being the man who doesn't immediately respond, the one who gives just enough, but leaves room for her to lean in, to ask, to wonder, because the moment she can predict everything you'll say, do, or feel, the tension disappears. And without tension, there's no intrigue. Without intrigue, there's no desire. You want to be unforgettable? Don't shout louder. Just stop handing yourself over so easily. Let her work a little to know you. Let her feel the contrast between you and the men who chase her with noise. You're not cold. You're composed. You're not rude. You're intentional. And the man she can't read, he becomes the man she can't stop thinking about. Not because he begged for attention, but because he gave none away, carelessly. Let the world guess. Let her wonder. Let your silence say more than your words ever could. Sometimes the best thing you'll ever say to someone is nothing, not out of spite, not because you're playing games, but because the man you've become no longer fits into the version of the story she left behind. You don't need revenge. You don't need a dramatic comeback. You don't need to prove her wrong. You just need to evolve so powerfully, so quietly, that by the time she looks back, you're already gone. Not bitter, not broken, just outgrown. Because the truth is, most women don't regret the breakup when it happens. They regret it when they finally circle back out of boredom, curiosity, or habit and realize you're no longer the man they left. You're not waiting. You're not checking. You're not hoping. You're building. You're rising. You're becoming. And that shift? That's what stings. Because she expected silence. She expected sadness. She expected to still be the center of your story. But instead, she finds a man who moved forward. Not in anger, not in denial, but in clarity. Because closure isn't something she gives you. You become the closure through action, through purpose, through transformation. Let me ask you something. What if the peace you're waiting for doesn't come from her explanation, her apology, her return? What if it comes from realizing you were never supposed to stay? Small enough to keep chasing someone who didn't see your value? What if the rejection was actually a redirection? The truth is, some of the best growth you'll ever experience will come from the silence they left behind, the unanswered text, the date that never happened, the connection that faded without warning, because when it's quiet enough, you start hearing your own voice again. And if you're smart, if you're grounded, you use that moment not to spiral, but to build. You build your body, your business, your mind, your discipline, your peace. And here's the best part. You don't have to broadcast your glow up. You don't have to post the progress. You don't have to show her anything. Because the man you're becoming doesn't need recognition. He doesn't need to be seen. He just is, unshakable, focused, self-sufficient. And when she finally checks back, and trust me, if you grow deeply enough, she will. She won't find the man who used to wait. She'll find the man who became unreachable. Not because you blocked her, not because you're angry, but because you've simply elevated so far beyond the version of you she once knew, that she no longer has access. And that is what real closure feels like. Not a conversation, not a final text, but a realization. She lost the man she didn't have the patience to wait for. So no, you don't need to win her back. You don't need to make her jealous. You don't need to convince anyone you're better now. You just need to become so much more of who you were always meant to be, that looking back doesn't even make sense anymore. Let her wonder, let her regret, but let that regret be hers to carry, not yours to solve, because your life, it's not a sequel to her absence. It's a new story, one she didn't stay long enough to read. And by the time she realizes what she walked away from, you'll already be pages ahead. If you've made it this far, there's one thing I need you to understand. The silence didn't break you. It sculpted you, that unanswered message, that cold shoulder. That long stretch of days without a single word, it didn't destroy you. It refined you, because what you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What felt like abandonment was actually an invitation to return to yourself. You see, when she pulled away, it felt like something was missing. And for a while, maybe it was, but eventually, you stopped chasing. You stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" You stopped needing her attention to feel like a man, and in that stillness, you started hearing a different voice. One that didn't beg for validation. One that didn't crumble from distance. One that didn't ask to be chosen. It was your own. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you realized you were never broken. You were just building in silence. You were crafting discipline where there used to be desperation. Purpose where there used to be panic. Clarity where there used to be chaos. Now, look at you. You're not chasing anyone anymore. You're not proving yourself through text messages or emotional performances. You're building something far more important. Your standard. You've stopped handing out access to your energy like it costs nothing. You've started treating your time, your focus, your presence as sacred. Because it is. And now that silence once unbearable has become your strength. You don't flinch in stillness. You thrive in it. You don't seek closure. You are the closure. That's the shift. That's the work. And that's what most people never do. They run from silence. You sat in it. They chase answers. You built boundaries. And through it all, you didn't just survive. You became untouchable, not because you've stopped feeling, but because your feelings no longer control you, not because you no longer care, but because you care deeply and wisely with discernment. You're not numb. You're awake. And now, it's your turn to lead, not by shouting, not by proving, but by simply living your truth. So if this message struck something inside you, if it reminded you of who you are beneath the noise, of who you're becoming, in the quiet, then don't keep it to yourself. Share this with a brother who needs it. Post it, send it, speak it, because someone out there is still in the spiral you just escaped. And if you're feeling that fire growing again, slowly, steadily, then type it below right now. I live with purpose, or I protect my energy. Because those aren't just words. They're a standard. They're a declaration, a line in the sand between who you were and who you've decided to become. So from this moment forward, stay focused, stay grounded, and no matter what comes your way, stay untouchable. If something in this video spoke to you, if you're on a path of rebuilding yourself with discipline, with stillness, and with a value that no longer depends on anyone else, then Stoic Heart Daily isn't just a channel you watch. It's a space you belong to. Here, every video isn't just content, it's a quiet strike to the soul, helping you carve out your own standard of manhood, because we believe this. You don't have to go numb to be strong. You just have to wake up, get focused, and guard your heart with intention. So hit that subscribe button to Stoic Heart Daily today, not just for more powerful content, but to come back each day to the man you know you were meant to be. Don't wait to be chosen. Choose your path.